Welcome to a meditation on United States military spending in honor of International Peace Day. The Loretto Community Peace Committee is sponsoring this presentation about how much we spend on war and preparing for war and past wars. I'm Mary Ann McGivern, a sister of Loretto living in St. Louis. This presentation is meant to be a meditation, an invitation for you to use it later as an exercise in contemplation. That's how I learned to read corporate annual reports and budgets. I sit and look at them. And when I look again, I see something new. For Peace Day, we would have liked to spend the time teaching you to fold paper cranes or listening to Finlandia. But no, we are going to look at the federal budget. To get us started, I want to give you a little sense of how much $1 billion is. You could buy an island in the Caribbean for $1 billion. That's a B. You could buy 12 new F-18 fighter planes made in St. Louis for $1 billion. So what I did was to pull out a chart of, let's see, I'll share my screen. It's a chart of transportation spending. This is how much state by state we spend on transportation. And you'll see that pretty generally it runs to $1 billion or a little bit more. Alabama, I couldn't make that stay on the same line, $2.1 billion. Alaska, this surprised me for how low it was, $1.4 billion. California, 11.5. I'm just going to scroll slowly so you can look for your own state, and I'll make a few comments. District of Columbia doesn't spend anything because it's in the federal budget. Florida, 8.9 billion. Come down, Missouri, my state, is 1.4 billion, more than I would have thought, but we have a lot of roads in rural areas. New York spends 17 billion, that's second most. And that's, I think, that their city subway system is included. Come along here, and Texas, to no surprise, spends 17.8 billion, that's the most. All states together, Texas doesn't have any public transit, by the by, all states combined spend 152.2 billion, a little bit more than $1 billion apiece on transportation. Okay, that's just an effort to try to help you to get a little sense of what we're talking about. Now, let's look at how much the federal government spends. We spend, here we go. We spend a total up here of $3,543 billion. And that's total outlays. And that's in the 2022 fiscal year, which began this last July 1st. Now, I'll just take a look down here. When the feds actually reported, and here this is the chart by the War Resisters League. They've been doing this for about 30 years, and they're very good at it. People don't particularly like the way they report things, but it is how they report them. So if you look at the way they report it, they include Social Security, retirement, and Medicare. And this is the graph they give us. And it looks like we don't spend much on the military at all. Richard Nixon started, or his administration started, reporting the military, the whole budget this way, because they wanted what we were spending in Vietnam to look like less. And by the by, this is present military spending. This doesn't include the interest that we've accumulated from foreign wars. And so this is how they report military spending from the government. but they won't disagree with the way that the War Resisters League reports it, which I'll make smaller so that you can see the whole once more, that we spend almost 50% on the military and some on physical resources, human resources, general government. So let's look first over here at what we spend on the current government and why this, well, what I'll do is make it again a little bigger, and there we go. Okay, so you hear people talk about the DoD spending 50 billion. That's usually the number, and here they've itemized it at 743 billion. But besides that, which is troops, operations, just operating bases and subways and fighter planes, procurement, and that's General Dynamics, Boeing, Lockheed's the biggest this last couple of years, Raytheon, maybe Rockwell is of the top five. Research and development, this is what gave us Teflon and Tang. Don't you believe it, that military spending gives us very much. Construction, family housing, and then the non-Pentagon, non-DoD spending, which is retiree pay, all the nuclear weapon cleanup, places like Hanford and Rocky Flats, about $28 billion. NASA, who knew that 50% of NASA's spending is military? The War Resisters League data, other government representatives may not like, but in a court of law, yes, they would not argue with it. They would say this is accurate. International security, Homeland Security, State Department. If you watch Madam Secretary, when she says to a foreign government, if you do what I'm asking, I'll give you a couple of fighter planes. Well, there it is, right there in the budget. And then we come over and we look at the past military. And that is for veterans benefits, 263 billion, including the operation of veterans hospitals, Veterans Administration, all told. And the interest on the national debt, which it is by the War Resisters League accounting, $476 billion, about 80% of what we pay in interest each year. We're paying that much in interest. And this goes back to the Vietnam War. It goes back to spending in the Cold War, when the wall fell down in Berlin, in Germany. A lot of us thought there would be a real cut in military spending, but there wasn't. We continued to borrow for the first Gulf War, and then for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria, plus other small wars. Perhaps we borrowed to pay for the war in Panama. So this, about 48% of the current budget, what Congress can vote in favor of. They can't touch the Highway Trust Fund or Medicare or Social Security unless they were to cancel it or to add to it. I mean, they would have to take a separate act of Congress. But this is the budget that they put together. And so then you'll see that physical resources include agriculture, interior, transportation, Homeland Security, the non-military of energy and NASA. And over here, general government includes the operation of Treasury, including that 20% of our debt, government personnel of various Justice Department, State Department. And then under human resources, we have Health and Human Services, the administration of Social Security, education, food, nutrition, HUD, and this is about 1,839 billion, as opposed to 1,704 billion on the military. So that's the story. That's what it looks like. That's what we have. And so now I would like to share one more quotation, if I can find it. Here we go. This was I find myself with a little bit too much going on. This is an article written by Jason Siebert, who is the director of the Peace Economy Project here in St. Louis, and I sit on that board of directors. And so he's writing about our expectation, having left Afghanistan, that the military would go down. But there have been 2 votes in the last couple of weeks, one in the Senate and one in the House. The vote in the Senate was a procedural vote to increase the military budget by 3.5%. And Senator Warren cast the lone dissenting vote. This would pave the way for Congress to spend $1.2 trillion additional dollars over the next 20 years. In the House, it was the House Armed Services Committee that made that vote. And again, many Democrats and Republicans voted yes to add $23.9 billion a year, which is where the 1.2 trillion comes in. And in his conclusion, Jason said, how do we release our democratic republic from this type of thinking that we have to keep increasing the military? We need to be realistic about security and realize that security is being defined by the companies that benefit from connections to the military-industrial complex, not by current threats. The greenhouse effect, rogue states, authoritarian democracy, pandemics, failed states are not fought by a military designed to fight a ground war in the Soviet Union in Europe in the 1970s. In managing the state-based threats, rogue states, authoritarian democracy, and failed states, we must exhaust the diplomatic arm of our government, the State Department, before considering force. And this means correctly funding the State Department. Jason Siebert is the executive director of the Peace Economy Project. And I think you can find a link to this article at peaceeconomyproject.org. So then I will use one more quote. This is President Eisenhower, April 16th, 1953. And he says, every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. So that concludes my meditation on military spending. And so finally, I would urge you to copy this address and paste it in your browser and listen to Finlandia And on this International Peace Day, and in honor of International Peace Day, to play Finlandia and lighten your heart. Thank you very much. And we will conclude this day.